really felt like early on in the game that the defense looked like they were overwhelmed. And they were overwhelmed because they were panicking with the puck. And when you have a whiff behind the net and then you have a hooking penalty and then you're in the penalty box like Jacob Trouba was, you realize, like, wait a minute, you've been around for a long enough time to realize what you're going against, what you're playing against. And that was kind of like a symptom of watching that game last night. A flat game again by the Rangers at home in front of a packed crowd that seemed to be quiet. McDonough and, of course, Ray Ferraro were talking about that as the game was going on last night. And I know there are people out there that are all Rempe fans. They want him out there, and they want him to set a tone, bring some energy to the team. And the team looked like it needed energy last night. So I can understand why a guy like Mark Messier would say that Rempe should be in the lineup. And I'm not going to second-guess Mark Messier because he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Ranger of all time, simply because of the way that he would play and would lead the team. But, I mean, you could see that Matthew Tkachuk and his band of merry men, they want to bring the heat. They want to hit you, and they're all over you. And when you're a defenseman, whether you're Ryan Lindgren or Jacob Trouba or Adam Fox, and you're in the corners, they're going to fight your ass to go get the puck. And that's what I'm talking about when I say you got to take it up a notch. When you go into those corners, you got to fight for that puck, and you got to go get it. And you can't be happy you can't be passive against this team. If you're Roslovic, you can't just be out there skating around, trying to find open ice because there's very little open ice. You got to go through it, and you got to go make the play. And, there was a little bit too much passiveness last night for me. And I think for most Ranger fans, and I think most Ranger fans, especially those who went to the game last night, will tell you that the energy just wasn't in the building. I think that's why, Mark Messier would like to have Matt Rempe in there. But, look, Igor gave up a soft goal early on. This could have been a 0-0 game going into overtime.
Yeah, I mean, right. It probably should have been. But as far as the energy in the building, I think there's a couple of factors that play into that. First, when you give up the first goal and you're down 1-0, I mean, I also think that there's a nervousness amongst fans for every fan base when you're playing a really good opponent and you start to lose. So it's like the initial reaction when you're a fan in the building when you're down 1-0 against a team that you were nervous about to begin with is not to be standing up going, all right, guys, let's go. It's more like, oh, God, here we go, and being nervous. And plus the nature of hockey, and I heard Jerry say this morning too, which is something that is so true, is that there's very few times in the course of just 5-on-5 play, unless you're scoring a goal, where the fans are just standing up and going crazy. I mean, you're watching the game, watching it unfold. If there's a big hit or a fight, you go crazy. So, I mean, as far as the energy in the building, the Rangers needed to score. The Rangers needed to control play. And neither one of those things happened.
Well, there's a guy on Florida that is probably the smallest guy on the ice, and his name's Ryan Lomberg.
He's like 5'8" or something.
5'9", yes.
Yeah.
And he was the one that had the goaltender interference last night, which was the proper call against him as he went into the blue paint, and he got in the way of Igor Shesterkin. But that guy's effort and that guy blocking pucks and that guy going into the corner and getting the puck is a prime example of a player that is small in size, but yet a pain in the ass on the ice, and was not going to be denied last night. You could see the effort. He didn't play a ton of minutes, but you could see the effort. And instead of shying away from contact or being passive in the corner or not blocking a puck and getting out of the way of a shot, I mean that kind of stuff. This guy laid it on the line, and it's just a small example of one person on that team who was the smallest person on the ice. So it just kind of tells you, where the effort level is. They're all playing hard. Don't get me wrong. We're in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's game one, and it was a disappointing game. It was another flat game like game 5 against Carolina was. But it was right there. It was nip and tuck. The game was tight. A soft goal by Igor, an unfortunate deflection by Lafreniere, and it's 2-0. And as Ray Ferraro said last night, you really felt like it was 10-0 because of the way that the Florida Panthers were smothering the Rangers. And the Rangers, look, they had 2 breakaways. Now, unfortunately, those breakaways went to Braden Schneider and Will Cooley.
Right, it wasn't Panarin and Zibanejad.
Right, exactly. But they had 2 breakaways, and Schneider hit the post. And late in the third period, when they were on the power play, you could see that they were starting to move the puck around. They were getting some shots at the net, and sometimes you need a little puck luck, and that didn't happen for them last night. So again, what I am more concerned about than anything else is just they have to take it up a notch when it comes to the edge that they have to play with, and realize that this team that they're playing against has played the game this way all season long.
Well, they also went to a cup final last year.
And they know what it takes. And even Alexander Barkov, their captain, and Ray Ferraro was giving us this story last night, said in the offseason after they lost to Vegas last year, I'm going to lose some weight, and I'm going to come back with a much edgier kind of personality in the way I play. I think I'm paraphrasing that a little bit, but that was kind of like the sense that you got from Alexander Barkov. And, he's right in the middle of everything, and he's a pain in the ass to deal with too. But that's what the Rangers, if I had to say what they were lacking last night, to me, that's the edge that Dave Maloney talks about, Steve Valiquette talks about, Henrik Lundqvist talks about, Mark Messier talks about. They all talk about it. And you could see it last night where I felt like Florida was smothering the Rangers and forechecking the Rangers into mistakes.
Right, and that takes us back into the Matt Rempe point as well. So everybody that's saying that they lack the edge and Matt Rempe being on the ice is going to be something that replaces that. And I disagree with it in this way. When Matt Rempe was out there in the Hurricane series, he had like 4.5 minutes of ice time, and he wasn't fighting anybody. Now, you want to tell me just his presence out there and it gets the fan base going and he's a fan favorite and, maybe that energizes a crowd. I don't think it's going to do that much. What you need is the guys that are consistently on the ice having more of that edge and winning those puck battles in the corner and taking it to the Panthers and not being the ones that are getting knocked down, but being the ones that are knocking the Panthers down. And if you're telling me 4.5 minutes of Matt Rempe on the ice not fighting anybody is going to do that, then fine, put him out there. But that's all you're going to get from him is 4.5 minutes and maybe a shot on goal. Like, I don't get it.
I do know that, as Larry Brooks wrote this morning, that Peter Laviolette does have options. There are other players that he could put in the lineup if he doesn't like the way somebody is playing. And, let's face it, the Kreider, Zibanejad, and Roslovic line really didn't show up last night. They were minus, I think Kreider was -2. I think Panarin was on the ice for all 3 goals against. And again, not his fault. I mean, these were the first 2 goals. One was a soft one, and the other one was an unfortunate deflection. And the other one was an empty netter. So the game was tight. It was defensive in nature. Paul Maurice, their head coach, said, look, I expect 2-1, 3-2 type games. And I think that's the way it's going to be this whole series. And like I said, we have a long way to go. It's disappointing. I'm annoyed this morning at the way that some of the Rangers played and didn't play with purpose and didn't play a snarly type game, if you will. Gritty, that kind of word would describe what I think Florida brought to the table last night. And sometimes it's easier to be the road team, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you say that before, where you don't have to worry. You're with the team in the hotel, and you're more bonded together, and there's no distractions of family and friends and people asking for tickets and all that type of stuff, and you're sort of just on this business trip. So but the Panthers have just been that way all year. Sean McDonough was going through the numbers in the beginning of the game and just talking about how evenly the Panthers have played both at home and on the road. They're just a solid team. There's just not a lot of flaws there. And I know Sergei Bobrovsky was given a lot of credit last night. I mean, I don't think that he stole this game in any way, shape, or form. I think the take of, well, Bobrovsky and Shesterkin is a wash. I don't agree with that. I think last night Igor's letting in that first goal was a bad one, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Sergei Bobrovsky is now the better goaltender in this series. Igor's got to definitely play better, but it's not like they're going. It's not Dominic Hasek we're talking about.
Right.
Here.
I mean, Igor gave up 1 goal that he'd like to have back. The other 2, there's really not. One's an empty netter, and the other one's a deflection off of his own player's stick. So those things are going to happen. I mean, Rangers have to shoot better. They got to get the puck through. That's not an easy thing to do in the NHL, especially against a defensive first team like Florida is. They have enough offense where, their defense creates so much problems, or so many problems for the Rangers defense with their forecheck and the Rangers just sometimes just wrapping the puck around the corner, around the boards and throwing it to somebody standing on the point. It's frustrating. And you see all these things when you lose. Obviously, And then when you think about the goal that went off of Lafreniere's stick, I mean, what was Igor thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, at that point,
I mean, I think Fox was coming back, or one of the players was coming back to grab the puck, and they let Igor play it.
Well, yeah, that was the thing. So the reason why it goes through the 5-hole is because Igor's trying to poke the puck away.
Actually,
with
Gustafsson, I think, was on the ice.
Yeah, and Igor's trying to, poke the puck away with his stick and is just not in any position to stop the puck. So, yeah, that was ugly and silly and something that happens in hockey games occasionally. And unfortunately, it ended the game at that point with about 3.5 minutes to go.
And it just felt like the game never got going offensively for the Rangers. But again, a soft goal. You got to start winning some puck battles. You got to stop throwing the puck away in your own zone. All the normal things that we talk about when a team loses. But I'm also not going to sit here and say, oh my God, they overwhelmed us. I mean, it was a tight game, and these all are going to be tight games simply because of Igor and because of the defensive prowess of the Florida Panthers. I doubt very seriously that unless somebody gets hurt in this series, that any team is going to be scoring like 4 goals in a game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way, and you mentioned, Paul Maurice said exactly that after the game. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. You're annoyed. I'm sure that you were tossing and turning, thinking about the things that needed to change last night, but this was not a hockey game where you're like, oh, man, this is going to be impossible to win this series.
And by the way, if Rempe were in the game,
yeah,
very unlikely he would have gotten any time whatsoever in the third period.
Sure,
very unlikely in a tight game like this.
Right, and he didn't, I don't think, I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think he did when he played in the Hurricanes.
He might have got 1 or 2 shifts. I doubt, because of the way the game was unfolding last night and the amount of players that Pierre Laviolette was double shifting and putting back out there trying to get some sort of offense going, that, it's very unlikely that he would have gotten a shift in the third period. So maybe he... the other thing, too, is you got to remember. So, Matthew Tkachuk is, just like his dad. He likes to run over people.
Yeah.
And he runs over, Vincent Trocheck. And that kind of sets the tone for the game. Like, okay, here, this is what's going to happen. And, Will Cooley he threw his body around. He took out Barkov. And so it's going to be a physical series. The Rangers just got to take it up a notch. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure Jerry will have it. But when Jerry asked Al this morning on the warm-up show to name one current Florida Panther, what he said was remarkable. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm hoping Jerry cut it up, but Al's answer to that was shocking, really, in a way. One, shocking that he actually kind of knew the guy, but what came out of his mouth was a sound and a combination of words that's probably never been said before. Sort of like McClutherness.
Okay.
No one said McClutherness ever before.
Ever
and
before
then Mike
in the
said
history of the human
right,
existence.
Speech for all these years and years and years when we were grunting at each other as cavemen. No one had said McClutherness. What came out of Al's mouth, no one has ever said before either. Like maybe a child. Like a young child learning how to speak.
Right.
Just putting sounds together.
Yes.
Maybe that. But yeah, so Jerry will probably have it.
I'll tell you the other thing I'm annoyed at, and obviously nobody's paying attention. I'm annoyed at the way that ESPN is shooting these games.
Yeah, I know. You can't stand it. Yeah.
I don't know why the director is shooting the games the way he or she is. I'm not sure who it is. But please, for the love of God, when the game is going on, I don't need to see guys going to the bench. I don't need to see cutaways of people sitting in the stands.
Yeah.
I need to see the action of the game. It's not that hard of a game to actually shoot when you think about it. You could actually keep the one camera on, and
the
most
entire
of us
time
would enjoy the game so much more than seeing a cutaway of Mika Zibanejad going to the bench while the play is still going on.
Yeah.
I am floored that nobody has actually sat this person down and said, don't do it this way.
Well, I think probably the person that would sit the director down hasn't watched a lot of hockey games themselves. Because if you do watch regular season or you watch in the way that MSG does it, it's completely different and it's not distracting.
Right.
Where this is.
And a lot of times, the play-by-play guy will be watching the monitor and he'll be talking off the monitor, being that you're seeing what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And it's very distracting when a weird cut comes in the middle of a play out of nowhere. It's almost like somebody is just pushing a button to show another camera to say, hey, we got this many cameras at this game. It's just it's
right,
annoying.
To show off, like, because you spent the money on it, like, let's just use everything.
And I'm assuming that whoever this person has done plenty of hockey games.
Trying to reinvent the wheel at the wrong time.
I think sometimes, yes, directors tend to over-direct, and they don't listen to the fan bases that are watching these games. And if you're there, you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you're sitting at home, you know exactly what I'm talking about.